Mr. Chairman, is it your birthday today?
It is.
Well, happy birthday, Chairman Cole.
Well, this is a big day. You know, first of all, I'm now officially eligible for Social Security, so this is a very big day. You know, so I'm even more intent on saving the system than ever before. I also am 1 year closer to passing Saddam Hussein, who shares birthdays with me, and I'm still accumulating them. He no longer is, so I'm pretty pleased about that. Both sides of that equation, quite frankly, and I get to share my birthday with James Monroe, who's one of my favorite presidents and the last of the founders to actually serve as President of the United States. So, good day. But even better because two of my great friends are here, and two folks that I admire genuinely as members. I get to serve on the same committee with them, and had an opportunity to hear the debates and as they've worked through their products. So I'm not. I think I'm probably a little more familiar, just having had the opportunity to hear the debate and the markup than most folks perhaps on the panel. So I don't have a lot of substantive questions, but I do want to make some points. I think. You know, in a sense, what we're going through right now and the frustration that all of us have felt about this, we're directing at the wrong targets because our friends don't have anything to do with this. Quite frankly, in some ways, the Congress and neither party has much to do with it. If you look at veterans funding under President Bush or under President Obama, it's moved up and moved up substantially every year, and I think appropriately so. And it's done it under Democratic Congresses and Republican Congresses. So this is one where both sides have actually been willing to write the check and serve up what they can, and they've done it year in and year out. So this isn't a congressional problem, at least from a funding standpoint, in my view, and it's not a partisan issue. Now, I do think the administration has to recognize they have been in office 6 years, and a lot of these are execution problems at this point. Now, I'm not saying they inherited a pristine operation, because I don't think they did. But 6 years is a long time when you get to hire and fire the top guy as they have. And so, you know, I look at the administration's critique here, and I think I'd be a lot more impressed with the critique over their performance in managing the department over 6 years, the largest single department in terms of employees, other than the U.S. military itself in the federal government. So, yeah, I think our friends down here have worked really hard. I think our friends, frankly, in the Veterans Committee have begun to get a lot tougher, and I applaud you both for fencing off money and trying to make money conditional and trying to hold folks accountable, because I don't think you're the problem. I don't think the Congress is the problem. I think the administration has been poor, probably under successive administrations, but when you're in office, you preeminently need to step up and take responsibility. And then I do think we're dealing with a culture that frankly, at the professional level, that has allowed itself to become corrupt. I mean, it's hard to do oversight when the people are lying to you, and they've clearly lied to successive secretaries of both parties, and they've lied to Congress, or been at least less than honest, shall we say. When you're producing results or testimony that say you're getting things done and you're not, and you're collecting a bonus, to me that ought to be a felony. I'm with my friend Ms. Fox here, that people that do that are defrauding not just the taxpayers of the United States, but people that we all honor and admire who've put their lives on the line in defending the United States. So whatever you can do through the appropriations process to hold people accountable, I know you will, but at the end of the day, that's an executive function. Congress, as I recall, last year we actually gave the new secretary, authority that no previous secretaries had, and I don't think any other secretary has, in terms of hiring and firing and holding people accountable. And I know we'll continue to do that. I think that's a good thing to do. But at some point, they have to answer it. Now, I'm like everybody here. It's easy to berate the bureaucracy. I can tell you, I've got 4 veterans homes in my district. I've got a large veterans hospital in it, the largest one in the state just outside of it in a neighboring district that certainly a lot of people in my district use. We've got the two largest employers in my district are military bases, so you can imagine the number of retirees we have, or people that come back and then work. And my dad was 20 years in the Air Force, 20 years then as a civilian defense worker at Tinker Air Force Base. Not an uncommon thing. And I will tell you, he spent the last 12 years of his life, he had Alzheimer's in veterans facilities, and 2 different ones, both in the district I represent, where he got excellent care. So I know there are lots of folks on the line out there that are looking after veterans one at a time that really care about what happens to them, because I saw the wonderful care they gave my father. So, you know, it pains me because we do spend more on veterans, and this is something this country should be proud of, than every other country in the world combined spends on their veterans. There's not another country in the world where you can go to a veterans hospital with a non-service related benefit 20 years after you serve, or non-service related injury or illness, 20 years, and get care. Nobody does that except the United States of America. We just got to do it a lot better. I know you both are really working hard on that. I'd commend the administration to do that. Let me ask you one question, though, because I think this does get to the administration's critique of the bill. Mr. Dent, and obviously Mr. Bishop, if you care to answer, do you have more money to spend this year than you had last year?
Yes, and by the way, I just received the Statement of Administration Policy, the SAP, just got it moments ago. We spend, this bill is providing an increase over last year of about 6% over what we enacted last year. It's true, you know, when you look at the bill overall, the administration would like nearly an 8% increase. We're providing just about a 6% increase. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, the difference in terms of spending. Now, the budget caps, and to address the concerns of some, and the ranking member raised the budget cap issue, whether we like it or not, the budget caps are law of the land. They were passed with Republican and Democratic votes, and the president signed them into law. I am certainly receptive to some dialogue about how you rebalance the sequester to move some of the proposed cuts off the discretionary accounts onto the mandatory accounts, and probably nobody would like to see that happen more than the distinguished gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, who's going to have to deal with the Labor, Health, Human Services bill, and if you think this bill is pretty tough, wait till you see the one that he's going to have to deal with. That's even a more difficult number. So bottom line is, yes, we provided nearly 6% more funding in this bill than we did last year.
If the gentleman have a comment he'd care to make?
Yes. I just wish that we could be honest about what we're doing. I mean, we owe veterans and their families, but we shouldn't use gimmicks like OCO to get around dealing with the real responsibility that we have, and that's what we're kind of doing in this bill. And I would just like to, I agree with Chairman Dent that we need to find a way to work to reallocate, to get better allocations, and certainly we need to be good stewards of what we allocate and make sure that there is accountability. But the bottom line is that the gimmicks and the 4.6 in advance, the advance funding, it's going to eat up the discretionary part of the bill, and that's going to fall on the other bills that come after ours. This is a very, very bipartisan effort here with defense and with MilCon and veterans. But when you get beyond that to some of these other bills, where we also have a responsibility as a Congress, if we're going to do right for our country and our country's future, we've got to find the right way to do it. And I just don't think the sequester is the way to do it. It was a poison pill, which it seems as if we never expected to swallow. But now we've got to find a way to get an antidote and get it straight.
I know, working with my friends in our area of responsibility on both sides of the aisle, we can probably do that, and I hope we do. I think our committee works together in a bipartisan manner. Whatever our difference, it's actually pretty well. But I think my friend from Georgia makes a couple of good points. Number one, when you say sequester was never meant to occur, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. The super committee was supposed to figure a way out. That was supposed to force the super committee, which had a year, to find agreement and common ground, and they didn't. If you fill that super committee with appropriators, you might have been able to do it, but there weren't any appropriators on that committee, as I recall. Number two, though, it's worth noting that poison pill was put there by the President of the United States. And have all these claims about the sequester, just go back and read Bob Woodward's book, The Price of Politics. This is a presidential suggestion that was put in law at the suggestion of the president, was signed by the president. So it's okay. I agree with the president that, and I agree with my friends here, it's probably not the right way to proceed, but it is the law of the land. And the president has offered a budget that undoes it, but it's not a budget that can pass. His suggestions will not pass. So I would suggest that, and I suspect this is going to happen somewhere in this process, that there's going to have to be a larger negotiation above us, above appropriators. We have to live within the law. That's our problem. We have, this is the law for us. Most of the rest of the budget has got to be passed into law. You could like Paul Ryan's premium support or not. You could like block granting Medicare or not. That's written in the budget. It isn't going to happen because it's not going to pass into law. Ours has, R302A, our top line number, has passed into law, passed by the Congress with the support and at the advocation of the president. So I agree with my friend, but I do want to point out for the record, in this case where you're struggling with the problem, and I know the administration likes to talk about the money, as my friend Mr. Dent says, a 6% increase versus an 8% increase after years of increases is not very much different. The real problem here is the management of the department. It is the running of the department. It is the holding people accountable. That is the responsibility of the president and the executive branch. That's not something we do here. We fund or don't fund. We look at programs. You guys are trying, I think, valiantly to use the tool you have by fencing off money and holding money back to try and use the one lever you have. But you could do whatever you wanted. You can't hire or fire who the Secretary of Veterans Affairs is. You don't have that power. And you certainly can't fire into the bureaucracy where we should. We've tried to give that power to the Secretary. So, again, this is one, rather than focus on what you don't like about a bill where you're getting 6% more money, I wish the administration would tell us, what are you going to do to change all these dozens of cost overruns like my friend Mr. Dent just pointed out in the hospital in Denver. So it is frustrating to every member of Congress on both sides of the aisle because Congress has done its job in terms of generally funding. If you looked at what the president has requested over the years in his administration, he's gotten most of the funding that he asked for. What we haven't gotten back is the management and the accountability and the transparency that we've asked for.
Gentleman, yield.
Yeah, I certainly yield, my friend. I'm sorry I'm on a little bit of a rant, but I know my friends share the concerns.
Yeah, we all have seen the changes in the leadership over at the Department of Veterans Affairs. We have a new secretary. He's not been on the job that long. He comes from the private sector. He is a veteran himself, and my initial encounters with him makes me feel pretty sure that he's going to bring common sense approaches to dealing with the problem. He's got a pretty wild bull to tame, but from my encounters with him, and I don't know what the chairman's impressions are, but I suspect that they're similar to mine. He wants to get to the meat of it and get it done, and get it done correctly, and cut through the bureaucracy and eliminate the inefficiencies. And I think that he's got a different approach to it, and I want to give him the opportunity to do that, but we want to hold him accountable in the process.
I would just add that I believe Secretary McDonald is very sincere and genuine in his commitment to veterans and the customer service. I mean, he comes out of Procter & Gamble. He can sell soap. So I'm every bit convinced that he is deeply committed to serving the veterans. That said, the challenge is the bureaucracy within which he's leading. It's going to be difficult. We saw what happened in Phoenix, where there were inexplicable and inexcusable waiting lists. Veterans died waiting for care at the Phoenix Veterans Hospital. I mean, I looked at that story, and my reaction was, my goodness, are they telling me there weren't other healthcare opportunities for our veterans in the Phoenix area. Nobody could have accommodated them. Of course they could have accommodated them. And so the real question for me is, are we going to provide veterans care, health care especially, more conveniently to our service members? And it seems to be a very difficult question for the bureaucracy. I hear what the ranking member said too about, on an emergency basis. My home is probably 60 miles from the closest veterans hospital. I have world-class hospitals, though, within 2 miles of my home. My veterans don't have access to those facilities unless they go in there on an emergency basis. That's the only way they get in. If they have to schedule something, off they go to Wilkes-Barre. If they can't get it there, they ship them down to Philadelphia to New York City, many more miles away. I mean, that's the reality that we are dealing with, and I've conveyed to Secretary McDonald and others that it is an imperative that in the 21st century that we should integrate the veterans and civilian health care systems to the greatest extent possible. We could educate our veterans after the Second World War. We didn't create veterans universities or colleges. We utilized the civilian infrastructure, higher education, to educate them, and it worked. They went to public and private institutions. They were well educated. They helped grow this great nation. Healthcare was different then. I acknowledge that. But today, in small and mid-sized and rural communities, there is excellent health care where veterans could be treated in their communities very effectively. But that option really isn't out there for them, even with the Veterans Choice Act. So, I mean, this is a frustration. The Secretary, I do believe, sees this. He understands this. How we redirect this ship, change this bureaucracy, which is big, and that's the challenge for all of us in Congress. The authorizers in particular have that challenge. Our job is to try to fund what they ask us to fund. But believe me, I hear the frustration. I feel that frustration. My veterans at home tell this to me all the time. Why can't I get care in the community where I live? It's easier for me and my family. And, here we are trying to give them better answers. It's a huge issue.
It is, back to the main point, though. I think you two are facing the unfair brunt of our collective frustration, because I know you're as frustrated as we are. This is not Congress's problem. For 2 presidents in a row, we have put a lot of money into this. We should have. I don't quibble with the money, but this is one where the bureaucracy. I'm like the 2 gentlemen. I'm hopeful about the new secretary. I really am. I think the background certainly is the background you'd be looking for in terms of West Point, major corporate affairs, and so I'm not here to beat him. But what we need out of the administration, here's a list of the tools we need to fix this thing. And I think Congress would more than willing give them. Again, I don't know anything that has been denied to the department that's in a significant way that successive presidents have been requesting. So I would just hope that we focus on that going forward. And I hope when we rail at the sequester, we remember who proposed it. And if you proposed it and advocated for it, and you've got a way to get out of it, that's all fine, but it isn't going to pass. So you better sit down and talk with the people that have the votes that can pass it, or you better come up with a different idea, because appropriators don't have any choice but to appropriate to the law signed by the president. We don't get to put it off. We've got a top-line number. The committee has tried, because it recognizes the difficult challenge that both of you have to actually give you more money than you had last year. That's not something that's likely to happen on the committee that Mr. Dent and I sit on Labor H right now. So this is one where the committee has tried to take the initiative and provide some flexibility and some additional resources. The president wants to get rid of the sequester that he proposed, then he needs to sit down and bargain. I certainly yield to my friend.
Staff just provided me with something, and I think I just want to correct the record here. It's regarding the sequester. And I think someone was listening to this debate and said that, here's a quote from Paul Ryan, who was sort of bragging about the Budget Control Act and how conservatives got it and got the sequester into law. And the quote is that what conservatives like me have been fighting for years are statutory caps on spending, legal caps in the law that says government agencies cannot spend over a set amount of money. And if they breach that amount across the board, sequester comes in to cut that spending, and you can't turn that off without a supermajority vote. We got that in law. That was on the sequester.
That's fine. And they,
It, it was and that was an agreement. And it was put there really like a guillotine, only to happen in the event that good folks were not able to muster their responsibilities in balancing that budget. Unfortunately, it happened. Now we need to go back and recalibrate and put in place something that works, because this is not going to work.
well, to my friend's point, I've been willing every time when there's been a deal raised at the top that gets, whether it's fiscal cliff or, any of these things, to try and vote to support where the two sides came together. But again, this was the president's suggestion. Okay, you can talk about Paul Ryan all you want. This was a White House idea. They gave him a year. I'll give you that for Congress to do it. What came, out of that was a deadlock super committee. Although the president didn't support Bowles Simpson either. And so here we are. So again, our problem is we got to sit down and work our way through this. The proposals on the table so far aren't acceptable to the people that have to do it on
I
either
really
side.
think that it would be more, if the gentleman would yield.
That's certainly yield.
It would be more constructive for us not to be finger pointing and not to be trying to say whose fault it is, but rather for us to come together and try to find a solution. Because it's not going to be a partisan battle here. These are not partisan challenges that we're faced. I mean, the future of the United States of America is dependent upon how we handle this. And it's not going to be resolved with Democrat or Republican charges and counter charges. And because the problems are not Democrat and Republican problems, they're American problems. And we've got to come together on a bipartisan basis and work it out. That's what we're sent here to do.
Well, I agree with my friend, and I think I've been willing to do that. I think the president needs to then sit down and do that as well. And, I don't think that's what we've seen so far in this. I don't think that's what we saw in the budget. So anyway, I think we'll have a chance to do it. I want to commend the two gentlemen. I've taken way too much time. Thank you for your hard work. I think you've moved the ball in the right direction with what you have. I envy you as a member of another committee that actually got an increase, that is pretty close to what the president asked for. That's a pretty good deal. That's better than a lot of other subcommittees did. So I'm sure we'll work this out as we go along. But again, this has not been largely a money problem. This has largely been a management problem. And that preeminently responsibility rests with the administration that is now into its 7th year. So, if you got a problem and you've had it for 7 years, I think you have to take some responsibility for it. That I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back some. Gentleman